everybody. It's really wonderful to be here with people who have been such steadfast, constant friends of Israel, especially over these past couple of years. It's wonderful to be together. Well, I'm sure like you all, I felt every stage of the past 2 years, the shock, the grief, the fear, the anger, the trauma, and felt determination to do whatever I can to show our support for Israel. Sorry, excuse me. NATAL is Israel's leading trauma and resiliency NGO, and UK Friends of NATAL was founded to raise funds and awareness for what they do in Israel. And the connection between Israel and British Jews, as we're all aware, is stronger than ever. And last week I saw that in action. I was in Manchester with 2 highly skilled trauma therapists from NATAL, supporting the tightly knit community following the horrific Yom Kippur attack. Basically, UJIA invited NATAL to come to Manchester and share its expertise with a community that has been shaken to its core. They're feeling scared, isolated, angry and anxious, and questioning whether they still have a home here. Drawing on NATAL's 27 years of experience in trauma care, developed through its work with Israeli civilians, families and first responders, NATAL was able to share practical tools for trauma response and recovery. The sessions we held in Manchester were in many ways life-affirming despite the tragic circumstances, and I was deeply moved by the strength, solidarity and resistance of this amazing community. Today, Israel is in a mental health crisis, as I'm sure you can imagine. The trauma runs deep and is likely to get much worse as things get back to some kind of new normal. And trauma, unfortunately, doesn't stay neatly contained. It's an invisible wound that echoes through every family, every school, every workplace and every community. They call it the invisible injury, and its chief psychologist says trauma is when the psyche encounters something it cannot hold. I think that also resonates here in the UK too. We've watched our homeland attacked, felt the rise of anti-Semitism and seen fear creep onto our streets. We know what too much feels like, and I'm sure many of us feel some level of trauma too. It's multi-layered, it's multi-generational, and for Israelis, trauma upon trauma upon trauma, and it didn't start on October 7th. It reverberates back since the founding of the state. It's an individual and collective trauma, and now Israel needs to heal and rebuild. Unfortunately, again, the suffering runs deep, it's complex and knows no boundaries. Holocaust survivors are watching their great-grandchildren face terror. Families and communities are marked by decades of conflict and are facing new horrors. And we can't even call it post-traumatic stress yet because Israel's still in the event, it's not over. So since 1988, NATAL is an apolitical NGO and has been a lifeline for all Israelis from all backgrounds, Jews, Arabs, Druze, Bedouin, Haredi, secular, helps everyone from ordinary citizens to medics to frontliners. Unfortunately, again, the demand for NATAL's help is staggering. Since October the 7th, NATAL has answered 100,000 helpline calls. On October the 7th, the calls started coming in almost immediately and continued coming from safe rooms, shelters in the kibbutzim, from the park, from the Nova Festival, with helpliners staying on calls for hours until help came, or didn't come, or until it was too late. During the first week of the Iranian attacks, calls to the helpline surged by 900%. And when the last living hostages came home 2 weeks ago nearly, the helpline received over 1,000 calls that week. They're now treating more than 3,000 patients every single week with a waiting list that has just topped 500 people. So, they've had to immediately scale up since October the 7th, develop rapid short-term therapy models, peer counselling, mental health first aid, and also they run innovative programs like neurofeedback, surfing, yoga, and also an innovative career development program specifically designed for young adults with post-trauma related to war or terror, including working with many of the Nova survivors. But NATAL's mission is not all doom and gloom. I know it sounds like it, but they've got proof from the work that they do that when trauma feels endless, that healing is possible, building resilience is possible, and post-traumatic growth is possible, which doesn't mean forgetting about what happens. It doesn't mean bouncing back unchanged. It means living with the pain, getting the treatment, and fiercely refusing to let pain and trauma define us so that we can build a new kind of life. And this is the story of the Jewish people from time immemorial. Throughout history, we've lived with anti-Semitism that has spiked time and again. And as a result, we have suffered collective trauma that lives in our collective memory. Yet it's important to remember that we Jews are strong and resilient and have always rebuilt and thrived despite the worst atrocities being inflicted upon us. Look at the former hostages who within months have found the courage to tell their stories and begin to rebuild their lives. That's resilience, that's the spirit we share. So as we remember the lives lost and honour those who are still waiting for closure, let's also commit to standing with every Israeli living with these invisible wounds and commit to helping them heal. Together we can ensure that trauma doesn't have the last word in our story. We rebuild and we hope for a better, peaceful future. And Yisrael, and thank you.